Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webcast. I'm Susan Krasinski-Robertson, retailing reporter with the Globe and Mail, and I'm pleased to be your moderator today. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which the Globe and Mail headquarters is situated is the traditional territory of the Wendat, the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, the Métis Nation, and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. We aren't anticipating any technical issues, but we appreciate your patience should any arise. If you need technical help, please click the help desk icon at the bottom of your screen. Today's webcast is about women in small business in Canada and the opportunities and obstacles to growth many entrepreneurs face along the way. This discussion is part of the Globe Women's Collective, an initiative dedicated to sharing the perspectives of women in workplaces across Canada. On behalf of the Globe and Mail, I would like to recognize Visa for supporting today's event. We have a speaker from Visa on our program today, along with entrepreneurs who are joining us independently. We will start with a brief interview focused on trends, issues, and opportunities for women who start and own businesses. Then we'll shift gears into a panel discussion. My first guest is Stacey Madge, President and Country Manager for Visa Canada, who will join us for a brief discussion that will lay the groundwork for today's panel. Stacey, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Really appreciate it. This is really important for Canada and our economy, and very important as a priority for Visa. So thank you for having me.
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation. You know, I know that Visa has released studies on the state of female entrepreneurship in Canada. So why don't we start there? Can you tell me a little bit about your findings on some of the roadblocks that are particularly acute for women who own small businesses and how the pandemic exacerbated those?
Sure, absolutely. So women-owned small businesses really grapple with a unique set of challenges, and these were compounded with the onset of the pandemic. So in Visa's pre-COVID, the State of Canadian Women's Entrepreneurship report, we found that about a third of established women entrepreneurs identified raising funds as a challenge when running a business. And then 50% of women-owned businesses cited a lack of available mentors or advisors as holding them back. And COVID-19 marked a massive shift to e-commerce, as we all know, with about 3 to 5 years of behavioral change pulled forward to today. And pre-COVID Canadian small businesses did not match the digital nature of Canadian consumers. So if we look pre-COVID, about 32% of all small businesses sold their products online, but only about 12% of their sales were coming from e-commerce. And that compares to almost half of their sales coming from online today. So there needed to be quite a remarkable shift. Small businesses had to harness the power of digital tools like never before. And 80% of small businesses attribute their survival to e-commerce. And the majority of all business owners agree that small businesses have been hurt more than others by the pandemic. And in fact, at Visa, if we compare Canada to other developed countries around the world, Canadian small businesses were particularly challenged by the restrictions in Canada and their duration. So further, as Canadian small businesses continue to rebound from the pandemic, challenges still remain. Many businesses still find themselves in a tough position because sales haven't bounced back to where they were pre-pandemic. And almost half of all business owners claimed the pandemic has made it more challenging to find the funding they need for their business. And this problem is more acute for women-owned small businesses than for men. And hiring has been a challenge since the onset of the pandemic, with about 50% of women-owned businesses stating they have not been able to find the staff to run their business effectively. And almost half of women-owned businesses saying that the lack of childcare during COVID-19 has had an impact on hiring and made it more difficult.
Now that you mentioned the economy sort of beginning to reopen, and we're entering sort of a new phase in the pandemic, have you seen anything surprising or particularly interesting in your research as we look to the future success of small businesses in Canada?
Yes, absolutely. So while challenges remain for small businesses, there's actually some good news. So according to Visa's most recent Back to Business study, optimism is really growing in Canadian small businesses, and some of our global data shows that Canada as a country is demonstrating greater resilience coming out of COVID, which is good news. So if we look back to 2021, for example, as I said, nearly half of Canadian small businesses said the year actually presented them with opportunities, and that their businesses are doing well. And 4 to 5 feel optimistic about their future coming out of the pandemic. The highest level of optimism in studies to date, and Canada ranks higher than many other countries we've seen around the world, which is great. And more than 2/3 say they can compete against any competitor with the right tools in place. So regarding women founders specifically, almost 2/3 of Canadian women small business owners believe they have learned some beneficial ways of doing business that they would not have learned about without the pandemic. So 2/3 of women-led Canadian businesses expect revenue growth in 2022 with an average of 20% growth anticipated, so which is very good news. And then the ongoing rise of digital payments and changing consumer preferences continue to shift the business landscape and create new opportunities for small businesses to thrive in Canada. So digital is top of mind for women-led businesses this year, with 85% of women identifying reaching more consumers through digital marketing, improving website and website infrastructure, and increasing revenue through e-commerce as top priorities for the year. Cross-border is a big opportunity for Canadian small businesses, and only under half of Canadian small businesses actually sell cross-country borders. And small businesses need to continue to go digital. This is really imperative. In 2022, more than half of Canadian small businesses, about 54%, accepted some form of digital payment. And the good news is that's up from about a quarter accepting digital payments at the start of the pandemic. But it is still not in line with Canadian consumer expectations. So about 2/3 of Canadian consumers expect to shift to being cashless within the next 10 years, reporting the top benefits as being easier shopping online, followed by physical contact and convenience, creating really the imperative for small businesses to do the same.
That's so interesting. And when it comes to women-owned small businesses in particular, I'm wondering, as we see these signs of recovery happening, what can be done to further bolster the growth of these female entrepreneurs and the businesses that they run?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing at Visa. So given that women-owned businesses are still underfunded and have a need for mentorship, Visa is very committed to providing support to women-owned businesses. And we have a program such as She's Next grant program. So the She's Next grant program, it was first launched in Canada early last year, and it was an extension of our global grant program. And we had 2 rounds awarding 20 Canadian women entrepreneurs $10,000 Canadian each, and 1 year of business coaching to support growing and expanding their business. And it's interesting, although they appreciated the $10,000, and I know I had the privilege of being able to share some of these with some of the folks on the phone here today. It's actually the 1 year of coaching that they most appreciated. And so earlier this year, building on the success of the past 2 programs, and just in time for International Women's Day, we announced another round of the She's Next grant program. And next week, we'll be announcing the most recent women entrepreneurs. And they represent a range of sectors, diverse perspectives, and are from across the country.
That's great. You mentioned family care, childcare earlier in our conversation being an issue for entrepreneurs and for attracting labor. Balancing family care and work responsibilities can be a significant hurdle for many women. Can you offer some insight, Stacey, on how you've toggled between both roles in your own career?
Yes, so it's a great question, and when we at Visa were going through the pandemic, there were a lot of women in our organization that really struggled. And I know for myself, I had 3 kids doing school at home, and and one of my three kids was independent and did his work, and the other two, I would get notes from the school asking as to where they were and if they were joining class. And what we found at Visa is that we really had to think about the person first, and we had to be much more amenable to the work hours that they could work around their family responsibilities, being mindful of not booking times when families needed to get their kids online to do school in the morning, or when they needed to feed them at lunch or at the end of the day. And it was really time to think individual first over work, because the work would just come back. And it worked out for us in the long run in our retention.
That's such a great insight. I think we have to leave it there, but Stacey, on behalf of the Globe and Mail, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing some of these insights.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now I'd like to introduce our panelists in no particular order. Hyla Nairi is the co-founder of 437. Rowan McEnoy is the founder and owner of Curl Shop. And Mariam Akram is the founder of Co-Natural Foods. Thank you for joining us today, everyone. Before I jump right into questions, I want to give you a moment to tell us a little bit about your journey and about your business. Give us a snapshot of where you're at right now. Rowan, maybe we can start with you.
So as she said, my name is Rowan McEnoy, and I am the founder of Curl Shop. Curl Shop is a growing small business. We focus on making great quality, affordable curly hair products. Everything is naturally based, and we manufacture everything ourselves here in Toronto, Canada. We first launched in July 2016, our first collection, which was the Coconut is Everything collection. And then shortly after, we launched two more collections, Buttered Up and For Men. And we now have over 30 different products that we offer. So we definitely have something for everyone. Curl Shop is one of the few Canadian Black women-owned brands in our industry, and I'm super proud of that. And I hope to be a Canadian household name super soon.
I love that. Hyla, can we go to you next? Tell us a little bit about 437.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Hyla, I am the co-founder of the luxury swimwear and activewear brand 437, as well as the e-commerce education community called How TF, which is this course and community on growing your business and launching a business successfully. And 437 essentially started 5 years ago as a hunt to find flattering swimwear that made us feel confident, being, woman with all different sizes and different comfort levels, but wanting to still stay on trend. And that was a really big key focus for us. And so it's been an incredible past 5 years of just ups and downs and a lot of growth along the way and challenges. And we're really excited to launch into activewear this year as well.
Fantastic. Last but not least, Mariam, can you tell us a little bit about Co?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mariam. I'm the CEO and founder of Co-Natural Foods. We are a Canadian manufacturer of organic, predominantly plant-based snacks. We sell our products in stores across the country like Loblaws, Shoppers Drug Mart, Healthy Planet, and many other retailers within Canada, but we also export to the Middle East, parts of Asia, and the US. We've grown exponentially in the last 7 years. We are predominantly, we're fully women-owned, predominantly women-led as well. And I'm very excited and positive about the growth, despite everything that's happened in the past few years and the challenges that many entrepreneurs and many female entrepreneurs have faced as well. So definitely excited to be here and excited to share some thoughts on this topic.
Fantastic. I'm so thrilled to have you all with us. Let's start with everyone's least favorite topic, the pandemic. This has obviously been a stressful time to be an entrepreneur, to be running your own shop, and I want to hear about how that affected each of you. Hyla, I'm wondering if we can start with you. Swimwear was one of the categories that was really affected when people stopped traveling during COVID. How did that affect your business? How did you guys cope?
Yes, that was a very unfortunate part of the non-traveling. Right away when the pandemic first hit, it was that moment of everyone was online. Let's just spend time. Let's make ourselves happy by shopping. And we found quite a peak at that point. But then I think after now we're allowed to go outside again, there was looser restrictions, but still not travel. Then we kind of were hit with it the most. And of course, you're mainly buying swimwear when you're about to go on a trip. There's obviously exceptions to that, but we definitely were faced with, of course, less people on the site, which in turn is less revenue. And then on top of that, just extremely high shipping charges, right, to get our product into the country. I mean, there was one, as we tried to, launch sweatpants, sweatshirts, as, of course, as many brands did around this time, we were faced with, like, I believe there was one time we had to get I think 1,000 sets on a plane to Toronto, and it was over $100,000. Like, we paid so much money for just to get the shipments into the country, because these really expensive deliveries. So we were just faced with challenges like delays, shipping costs, less people on the site, less revenue. So it was extremely stressful. But we really just had to get strategic and remind ourselves that, this is a good opportunity to think beyond swimwear. And as a company, how can we just get less dependent on travel and a specific season, which is the summer, and more consistent as a company? And so hence why our expansion into activewear this year.
And so now that will be a permanent change then to your business. That's a way that COVID has sort of reshaped 437?
Yes, absolutely.
That's really fascinating. And Rowan, on your end, I know that you really started out in e-commerce. This was a time when a lot of businesses pivoted to digital. You were already there. How did all of this affect you?
Yeah, so when the pandemic first hit, like all businesses, I was like, what is going to happen? Like, I had no idea what to expect. But as you mentioned, we are primarily online and e-commerce based. And since we are hair care and people still need to shampoo their hair, even if they're staying inside, we found a huge increase in revenue. It was actually like unexpected. We were shocked. By the end of 2021, we saw a 200% revenue increase, which during it, I didn't even notice because I was just like, go, 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 get the products out. And then by the end, I was like, that is crazy. But yeah, and then we also saw like a local or like a kind of a community effort to support local small businesses as well as minority-owned businesses, which was awesome. Like, we saw a huge growth in our awareness, just generally speaking, and then people going out of their way to be like, we're going to support you specifically, which was great, and also kind of led to our increase in sales. But yeah, the pandemic was scary at first just because it was unexpected, but revenue-wise, just because we were kind of set up to thrive in an online market, it was actually a good thing that happened to us. We definitely still had some struggles though, as Hyla mentioned, with the supply chain delays. It got to a point where some of our suppliers, and we'll have like our main supplier and then even like backup suppliers, like 2 or 3 of them. And it got to the point where even our like last backup supplier was like, we're out of stock. And it was in late 2020 and we were like, okay, like what are you thinking? And they were like, maybe 2022, which we were like, that we can't do that at all. So it got to a point where we thought, especially with the increase in sales, I was like, I'm not going to have any product on the shelf to sell anymore, which was super scary. So at first it was like awesome. Then it got scary. And then luckily we were able to kind of pivot and solve those problems. And we were affected for a bit and honestly still a little bit affected with some of our suppliers. But overall, the pandemic being an online business was actually really beneficial for us.
That's amazing. I think you're in good company. The largest retailers in Canada are still being affected by supply chain concerns, so I don't think you're in there at all. Miriam, last but not least, tell us about Co. Sounds like supply chain has been a theme, but how did that affect you, and what other effects did the pandemic have on you?
Yeah, well, everyone was like, oh, you're in food, you're like safe. And I'm like, well, we're in confectionery, so it's quite different. A lot of our products are grab and go snacks. So we definitely, saw a decline in certain areas. Like people weren't out as much, they weren't going to work, out and about buying snacks on the go. We also supply food service, cafes, coffee shops, all that good stuff. So, and those were either forced to close or were closing and opening. And other retail stores, like some of our, we sell our products at the cash register at some of the retail stores that sell clothing and whatnot. So those shut down, those opened up, shut down, opened up. So we've definitely had to pivot as well. And for the last 7 years, our main focus was only retail, retail, retail. And we realized how weak the company was with sales online. And that, through the pandemic, we realized the importance of having an online presence, which we're still working on. It's definitely been a work in progress, and has shown us the importance also of diversifying our supply chain. Not, as Hyla mentioned, not relying on one supplier or that could cause a lot of issues. So it's definitely helped us strengthen our supply chain, the understanding of where to sell our products. So as much as it was definitely a challenge going through the pandemic, it's taught us a lot about also perseverance, relying on other entrepreneurs for mentorship, advice, kind of holding each other's hand as we navigated the madness of what happened in the past 2 years. And, being an entrepreneur isn't just challenging in terms of, selling and being out there. It's also mentally challenging. So it's definitely taught us, how to be strong in our mindset. And by us, I mean me and my amazing team, and how to rely on each other and communicate openly about what we're feeling and how to overcome it all. So it's definitely been, I guess, a growth process through the pressure cooker of COVID, for sure.
It's enough of a pressure cooker running your own business, let alone having that layer on top of it. And I think the stress aspect of it is something that is probably under discussed. I want to throw that to the other panelists. Have you all dealt with that within your own businesses, and how have you tackled that challenge? Feel free to
just on mute there.
Yeah.
Are you sorry in regards to stress specifically and dealing with that?
Yeah, and just the mental challenges of dealing with the pandemic, dealing with running your own shop. How's that gone for you?
It is. I rely on friends and family a lot, and it did get hard in the pandemic just because we were forced for quite a bit of the time to kind of isolate, which definitely doesn't help when you kind of need an escape. So there were times where I was like just doing work, and then I would like come home and sit on my couch and be like, and that's it. And then I would do that again the next day. So when things did start to open up and I could kind of create like my like circle of people that I could just kind of relax with and just like decompress, I just prioritized that a lot. And I also just started exercising quite a bit, to be honest. Like I wasn't going to the gym, but I had a backyard that I could go and just kind of like do yoga or, anything for 30 minutes of just like lying in the sun where I could. That helped me a lot, but it was hard to find relief when you were kind of forced to stay inside. I'm not gonna lie.
Absolutely. Hyla, how about you?
Absolutely. I think because of the pandemic, or just in general, I think being a small business owner or an entrepreneur with a growing company, I think stress is just an unfortunate part of something that we have to face, or not always, but oftentimes comes into the mix. And it's about, what we do to kind of balance ourselves out. And I've just found over the years, a few things have really worked for me. Firstly, reminding myself that I'm not just my business. I think that we get so identified with our companies. It's a big part of our egos. It's a big part of just how we identify ourselves in the world, and a big source of our pride and what makes us proud. And I think that when you kind of remind yourself that you're beyond that, and that your relationships with your family and your hobbies and, your passions outside of work are also a huge part of you, and you tap into those, I think that alleviates a little bit of stress. So when the company isn't doing as great, you still have these other parts of your life that keep you strong and keep you balanced. And I find, just making that routine, whether it's in the morning, it's your gratitude journal, it's your meditation, it's, having a good circle around you. I've talked about this recently to a group of individuals of just auditing who's in your life. Do you have people in your life that are energy vampires and they're, kind of tearing you down or not believing in your goals and your vision? Or do you have people around you that encourage you and, have you keep believing and manifesting? So I think a combination of all those three things have helped me for sure. But I think that, it's just something, it's an everyday thing that you just have to choose to not allow stress to kind of take you down, and more so have like this more optimistic feeling of, okay, I'm going to tackle this and I'm going to be okay right after I tackle it. So it's an ongoing process.
So many great points there, though, and great advice, I think, for others. Just before we move on to the next question, I want to remind our audience that we will be accepting audience questions, so feel free to get those in and we will get them to our panelists. I want to talk now about funding, which is obviously crucial for any small business owner, and you've each had your own approach. Miriam, I want to start with you on this one. I understand that you're in the process of securing Series A funding. Can you walk us through what that process has been like?
Oh, it's been a challenge, let me tell you. It's interesting when when I started the business, and I applied for loans and stuff, there's a lot of resources for smaller businesses in terms of like government grants and, the BDC and some other great resources we've had. And then once we've kind of grown to a certain point, so we're not a large business, we're not a small business, we're kind of small medium per se, and understand that the food industry is very capital intensive. There's slotting fees, marketing fees, chargebacks for retailers. Like, it's very capital intensive. We realized we need to secure funding. So we set out to raise our Series A, $2 million in funding. And, I just put the pedal to the metal and just started approaching a lot of VCs. And it was quite interesting because there's very, very few women in venture capital. And, a lot of times I'm pitching to men, not necessarily men that have experience in food, or, men that understand the industry. Predominantly also the people we sell to and our customers are predominantly female. So, it only makes sense to pitch to a female who's like, hey, I love what you're doing. It absolutely makes sense. Like, let's put in some money here. And that was definitely a challenge. And when I did a lot of research, I was like, why are we having such a tough time? We're a profitable business. We've grown considerably year over year. We have over, 6,000, 7,000 plus points of sales. We sell in Canada and outside of the country. We have an awesome team. We've, bootstrapped for 7 years. So it's definitely was and definitely continues to be a challenge. However, we're almost there. We've secured some letters of intent, and we're hoping to close it within the next few months. But it's definitely had its challenges for sure. And it made me realize the importance of having women in VC firms. And what I found quite interesting is even the venture capital firms that are represented by women or have like a female face tend to often have men like be the person you're talking to. And that was kind of disappointing. So it's something I would definitely love to see a change with in the future. And hopefully one day myself start a VC fund for women. And I would like to also focus on minority. I'm a minority as well, and that's definitely, with already under 3% of VC funding going to women, even less of that goes to minority-led startups and businesses. So I think it's definitely very important, and it's through this journey, it's really taught me, what I'd like to see in the future, and hopefully what I'd like to become as I one day, grow this business and hopefully sell it. What I'd like to do definitely in the space. So, yeah.
Love that. And so many huge topics you just brought up. Who's in the room? Who are you speaking to? What is the makeup of that VC landscape, which I know has been something that has been talked about before by other female entrepreneurs, other entrepreneurs of color. We were talking just last year, a colleague and I, to Joanna Griffiths over at Nix, and she was talking about doing a series of fundraising while she was pregnant with her twins and having to say to her partners, we're gonna rule out any VC firms that raise my pregnancy as a concern. And that was at once very interesting and fascinating, a big move on her part, but also tells you something that would have to be discussed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you, Hyla. You know, you chose to go a bit of a different route on the funding topic. Can you tell us why you didn't pursue fundraising?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a mixture of a few things. I think partially, when we started this company, we were still in university. We were at Queen's studying business in our final year, and it was not intentionally what it is today, like a multi-million-dollar company. It started off as, hey, let's design some bathing suits that are flattering and make some travel money and make a product that we love and see what happens, right? So we didn't go into it thinking that. And then surely, of course, as the company grows, then, okay, maybe you can start considering it again. And then at that point, we didn't consider it either because, it wasn't capital intensive, the brand. I think there are ways that it could have been, but we really took that very lean approach, like extremely frugal. We did not pay ourselves for 2 years. We didn't have an office. We lived at home. And any dollar that we pitched into the company just went into manufacturing and then shipping costs. So we truly had to believe in influencer marketing and free organic social media, and to get the brand to make its millions of dollars without any capital. And I'm not saying that it was necessarily super fun having to struggle and not be able to pay ourselves or hire the type of employees that we would have loved to in terms of experience level and salary level. But I think it was more so, we were maybe young, naive, and also wanted to see what we can do ourselves. And we never came to a constraint where we couldn't afford to do an idea that we had. Now, maybe now as we kind of want to grow in certain industries like activewear, we've maybe definitely considered a little bit more, okay, do we need more money, or can we do it ourselves, but maybe stretch thin and really kind of blow through some of this cash. But I think, if I were to start another company today, I'd definitely probably go the fundraising route. But I think that this was like our baby, and, started off with we allowed it to grow as it needed to rather than a capital investment and then grow faster. And I don't think there's a right or wrong. I just really think it's like, what sort of journey do you want to have, and what sort of decisions do you want to make? We love just being able to like completely have all the decision authority and not have to run it or hear from somebody else. But I will say the downside and why I do think it would have been great to raise was that advisory, the mentorship that would have come with that. I think that's something that we really missed out on. And I think definitely it kept that brand young and fresh and all of that. But I think it missed some of that corporate expansion, that supply chain, some of that financial advisory that we could have definitely received. So pros and cons to it all, maybe one day in the future.
Really interesting point about sort of the upsides and the downsides. Rowan, I want to ask you too. You were a recipient of one of the grants that Stacy spoke about during our conversation. Can you tell us about your decision to enter that program and what that's done for your business?
Yeah, I was. When she was talking about it, I was smiling all over again just because it was so great. So Curl Shop was also, I call it an expensive hobby when it first started. I was still working full-time, and I started it with a friend of mine, and we were kind of just like, you know what, I kind of want curly hair products that were like affordable, and it was super hard to find in Canada. And I used to travel to the States just to get stuff and then would like bring it back here, which is just not feasible. So it started as like making products at home for ourselves, and then eventually got to a point where like, maybe we can sell this. And then we kind of posted it, and it just organically grew to what it is now. Through social media and like word of mouth and people just loving what we put out and wanting to support it, which has been fantastic. But it is a expensive hobby in the sense that like we weren't paying ourselves at first, but obviously all the ingredients that we need, the packaging that we need, the labels that we need, and then shipping costs are like very expensive. So luckily, with at the beginning, any money we made, we just put back in the business, and it kind of allowed us to just grow slowly that way, which was awesome. But it did get to a point where, like, if we needed to expand or, you know, increase production, we did need money. So we were occasionally applying to grants and loans, and honestly, we had no luck. We used to apply to anyone that someone would send it, and we would apply, and we'd be like, okay, let's just try again. And we just thought it was a point that, you know, we just weren't ever going to get picked until the call that we got with Visa for the Visa grant program. And I'm pretty sure I like wept on the phone really dramatically because I was just so excited that finally someone like saw us and believed in us and was willing to like fund our growth, which was awesome. But yeah, it's been a steady process, and with that money we were able to invest back and then expand some collections and products, which was great. So now we're at a place where we're like steady growing again, and then because we had such success over the past couple of years, we've been able to reinvest and stuff like that. And you know, it's no longer just an expensive hobby. Now it's like a full grown business, which is awesome. But yeah, it was definitely a struggle finding funding, even as a small business at first. And you know, I'm never sure why it was so hard, but it was great to finally be seen.
I love that. You know, you've all talked about hurdles you faced, I think, in this process. And I wonder if I can just open that up to the three of you. If there are any other hurdles you faced when pitching your business and how you overcame them. Do any of you want to speak to that?
I'd say a definitely big hurdle is like when you start developing self-doubt. You know, when I started pitching, it was like, oh, you're too small for our fund size. Oh, you're, you know, why aren't you online? You should be online. Like another VC would say, well, why are you in retail? You should only be online. And then another, you know, it's like everybody has a different opinion, and you're like, you know, am I like doing things incorrectly? Is there like a correct way of doing things? And I think that's what you realize as an entrepreneur. Nobody has the answers. Like nobody has this is how you do it. This is how it's done. And this is how you're going to be successful, because there's people who have raised money and became successful, or raised money and haven't been successful, or bootstrapped and were successful, or vice versa. So it's just, you know, the self-doubt. And, you know, I think when you talk to a lot of different people with different opinions, at some point you have to say, I have to trust myself and trust the process and trust that I don't have all the answers, and I'm going to persevere. And I think a big part of being an entrepreneur is just persevering through the madness, because I mean, the madness will come to you if, you know, if it hasn't come yet, it's going to knock on the door in one form or another. So the process has definitely taught me how to be self-reliant in my beliefs of myself, and instead of looking for somebody out there that's more successful, that maybe has more money, that's going to validate me and my business and what I'm trying to do. So that's definitely a challenge that I think I overcame to a degree. Obviously, it's a work in progress. And I definitely, you know, I think I'm proud of what I've accomplished, my team has accomplished thus far, and I won't let self-doubt take that away, which is, it's easy to get carried away mentally and be like, I'm failing, I suck, what's happening here, you know. So yeah.
Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can jump in. I mean, for me, it's less pitching into like investors, but more so, you know, when I'm in a business setting, or when I meet someone randomly, and, you know, when someone asks what I do, I oftentimes get just met with like, you know, not being taken seriously, because the simple line is, I own a bikini company, right? And I think that if you kind of just say that, unfortunately, I just don't get taken seriously, like when I say that, unfortunately. And I think that, you know, I feel like I always have to constantly put like facts and, you know, things like that around it. It's not the same as if I were to say, oh, I'm a lawyer, and then all of a sudden you kind of just get natural credibility. Like I say, oh, I own a swimwear brand, and, you know, oh, do you have any customers? Oh, do you guys have a website? Or do you guys even have an Instagram? Like I get met with these very assuming the least type of questions, rather than if my friend would say, oh, I'm a lawyer, and they're like, oh, cool. Like, you know, you never ask, oh, do you working in an office, or do you have a client yet? Or, you know what I mean? So I think it's more of these feelings that you don't get taken seriously, and oftentimes I'm like, that's okay if I'm not, I think that I don't have to prove myself to everybody. I know what I've built, I know what my team has built, but it does suck because you want to be able to have the same opportunities and get into the same rooms and discussions. But if you're just labeled as someone who just owns a bikini company, I think that at the end of the day, yes, it could be bikinis and activewear sets, but it's a full-on e-commerce company with, a whole strategy behind it, and people need bikinis. So it's just one of those things that sometimes your category doesn't give itself its own natural credibility or business. And I think you just have to learn to be like, you can make millions of dollars with a bikini company. So let me show you some financials. Yeah, sad.
Absolutely. We have some audience questions coming in, so I'd like to toss those your way. And Hyla, I've got one for you. An audience member has asked, how or do you have any tips for maintaining a healthy co-founder relationship?
That's a great question, because my co-founder and I became best friends in university and then chose to start this company together. So it's like that, how do you balance being a best friend and also running a company together? And I think what worked really well for us is we have complementary skill sets. So we never want to do the exact same things. I run the marketing and the growth of the company, and she focused on more of the design and the operations. I'm more people facing and she prefers not to be people facing. So we never really step on each other's toes. And, oftentimes we also get asked, well, what happens when you guys have a disagreement? And I think we kind of can tell who wants it to go their way more. Who's more passionate about, like, no, I really think we have to do this color. I really think we have to do this. And we just say, okay, like, you clearly want this and you truly believe in it, and I'm going to let you have it. And then people also ask, well, how do you separate it? Do you not talk about work when you're out for dinner, and then vice versa? And we've learned to just say, no, it does get blurry and it does happen, and that's okay, because we've learned that works best for us. While we're at work, we might talk a little bit about personal life, and while we're at dinner, we'll talk about work. But I think, it's just learning what works for you, not taking things personally, and working on the relationship, having times, like, we try to go on a trip every year for our friendship, and that's really important.
I love that. I've got another audience question. This is for all of you. What strategies are you using to build good teams? So how do you pick people who will buy into your vision and do things the way that you believe they need to be done? Rowan, I'd love to throw to you first on this, but please, anyone else jump in too.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate that, at first it was, a non-existent team almost. It was a big, just, doing the most I could do. But I got to a point where I actually have a lot of friends I just know a lot of people who have a lot of skill sets. So it's been really awesome that if something I'm not strong in, I can be like, hey, I know you're great at this. And then luckily they've been like, yeah, I would love to support your brand. That's awesome. And then I could kind of pass it on that way. But I think it's also, you have to be willing to admit, like, what your weaknesses are, like what you're not great at, because a lot of the times when you're starting a business, you try to do it all. And that's obviously, sometimes you have to do it that way. But you can find yourself in a situation where, something's lacking just because that's not what you're like the best at, which is totally normal. So being able to admit that and then sourcing someone else that can do that. I haven't really had to go outside of, my like close circle, but through like friends of friends and stuff like that, I've been able to find people. Recently, I've increased our production staff, and that I have done outside of my friend group. But that was just, just taking the interview process like really seriously, and, just remember that like it is a business, even though it's like really close to home. And like, it seems people might say it's just a hobby or something, but, interview, check references, all that kind of stuff until you find someone that like truly fits your team, and just taking that whole process very seriously.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
I would say it's also trial and error, definitely learning from your mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes in hiring, and now I kind of know what to look for. There's this saying that kind of sticks with me. It's hire slowly, fire fast. Now, obviously, we're not encouraging people to fire, people left, right, and center. But sometimes when you're an entrepreneur and you're busy with so many things, you tend to overlook and make excuses and sometimes lead with your heart as well with employees, which sometimes isn't the best move and best decision. So, and definitely through experience, you learn to trust your intuition as you grow the company, and also having other people that come into the interview process and other people with a different eye. I used to be super like, oh my gosh, you have problems with your family, tell me about it, and almost lead with your heart, which is great. But when growing a company, sometimes you have to disconnect, and having somebody that's stronger, that's more, looks at things differently, do the hiring process, and then eventually bringing in HR and whatnot is super important. So at least that's what I've learned so far. So.
That's so interesting, and kind of related to teams. Another audience question, which I think applies to something you said, Rowan, too, about how used to doing everything yourself you are when you start a business at first. And one of our audience members wants to know, how do you learn how to delegate? You build up this habit of building your own business and doing everything yourself, and then how do you adapt? And I want to throw that out to any one of you. Please jump in.
I think I would just say that you kind of have to get to a point where it is hard, because you're definitely so used to doing everything and seeing everything from start to finish, and then again and again. So it is hard to finally let a piece of your baby go to someone else and, trust that they do it. But if you do get to a point where you have hired someone, which you do trust, you kind of have to just lead with the trust and hope that they will do what gave them to do. And then sometimes things happen and it's not always perfect, but that's what teamwork is about. And you can check in and work on it, and obviously don't just throw it at them and then walk away completely. It's still your business and you still need it run in a certain way. So check in, or set up for example, for a particular teammate, we have monthly check-ins and stuff like that, just to make sure that we're always on the same page. And, I always know what's coming, but throughout the month, it's kind of on her to do what she needs to do to effectively run her job and do her thing. So it is hard. And you do have, at least I did, I had the inclination to be okay, now what's next? Okay, what are you doing now? And, I kept wanting to see, but eventually you only end up hurting yourself the more you do that, because you overstress yourself, you overwork yourself. And the whole point of hiring a team and delegating is so that you get to, put some relief on yourself, and then also focus on things that someone else can't do for the business. The things that, as the business owner, only you can do. So, take that time to not only, delegate to someone else, but also just take that time for yourself to be okay, now I can finally focus on the thing that, I started a year ago, and, I'm only 70% complete still. Let me finally get it to 100%, because I have someone else working on all the other things that I could do, but why spend my time on that,
Hyla and Miriam, anyone else have any thoughts on that subject?
Yeah, I think it's important to hire your weaknesses, the things that you're weaker in. You can't be a master of all trades as an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of us are we're so optimistic as entrepreneurs. We're so persevering that we think we could do everything. And then you're stretched so thin and you're exhausted. And that's not the best thing for yourself or for the business. So definitely hiring people that are stronger than you in areas that, again, that they're stronger than you in is super, super important. I love sales and product development. I hate finance. I don't even want to look at a balance sheet again in my life. But obviously I have to know the ins and outs of the business and the finances of the business and have an understanding of it. But having somebody that's so much stronger that could, hold that role, do the accounts receivable, the payables, really take that on so I can focus on things that I'm stronger in, and they can strengthen the financials of the business through doing what they do best, and I strengthen it through sales, which is what I do best. So that is so important, and just understanding that again, being a master of all trades is almost impossible. Like, it's okay when you're small and you're starting out, you could definitely do everything, but there comes a point where you have to let the baby go, you know, and you have to like just send it off into the sunlight and hope for the best. And obviously there's going to be mistakes that happen, and that's part of the growth process of any entrepreneur and growing a business. So just learning to you know, move through whatever comes your way. Yeah.
I love that. We're getting some great questions in from our audience, so I want to keep the ball rolling with these. We've got another one. Someone asked, where do you go to find mentors, especially female mentors who might have a particular perspective on what it is that you're going through? Hyla, can I toss that one to you, or does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
Sure. My method is a little untraditional, but has worked well for me. And it's such a social media millennial type answer, but I genuinely find that having friendships in other entrepreneurs or someone in like the similar industry, or, you know, who works at a startup or something like that, that to me is where I find a lot of my mentorship. You know, I think there's some really great programs out there in finding formal mentorship and a lot of like, you know, conferences. I love all of those places, but my best mentorship is that a lot of my closest friends that I've built over the last 5 years of starting 437 are, a lot of them are entrepreneurs or work high up at a tech startup or whatever it might be. And we just pick each other's brains in the most informal way possible, but it's incredible. Like, they'll be like, oh, you know, how much do you pay for this position? Oh, are you guys, do you have a supplier for baseball caps? Like, we're able to share so much information with each other rather than like surface level type of talking. And sometimes people ask me, okay, well, how do you become best friends with an entrepreneur? Like, that doesn't just happen overnight. And I think that it's less about it happening overnight, and it's more of connecting with them, following on Instagram, commenting on their stuff, finding entrepreneurs or someone in that relative field of yours on TikTok, and starting to talk. And next thing you know it, you know, maybe you make the first move and say, hey, like, we should go do a workout class together sometime if you notice that they like to work out in the same studio as you. Or, hey, notice you love like green juice, like, let's go to Fresh on Spadina and grab a juice together. Like, let's, you know, you kind of finding out what someone's interests are and trying to align on something related to that, and just meeting up with them. It can turn into a lot of friendships, and a lot of my best friends is how I met them. I gifted some entrepreneurs some product, and next thing you know it, you know, we're traveling together. So I definitely think that's my atypical type of mentorship, but I think it's worked out really well for me and some of my friends as well.
Hi, sorry about that. That was my own technical glitch. Anyone else have any thoughts on how you found mentors?
I'll chime in. I'm like super not antisocial. I'm actually very introverted, and everybody's like on Instagram. They're like, as an entrepreneur, you need to be on Instagram and TikTok, and like, I hate that stuff. And I'm just a very private person, and it's definitely been a struggle for me because I have like a very small circle of really close friends, and they're my anchors in many ways. But having mentors is so important. And I think through the pandemic, I also realized the importance of mentorship. And you know, it's exactly what Hyla said. I've been reaching out to other entrepreneurs, talking to them, and kind of connecting with them in many ways, and also utilizing certain apps and stuff. Like LinkedIn is awesome. And I know that, what is it, Bumble for Business? It's been a recent thing, which is really cool because you meet the most interesting entrepreneurs and people you wouldn't usually meet, you know? So I've been utilizing different resources like that because I am in my shell, like, and I have a very regimented life. Like, I'll work, go to the gym, sleep, work, go to the gym. Like, it's very, you know, robotic almost. So tapping into some of the new tools and new things that are out there for entrepreneurs is something I've been doing. I think there's another app called like Sharper for entrepreneurs. So dabbling into that and connecting with other entrepreneurs via LinkedIn and stuff like that is what I've been doing.
Really interesting. We've got another audience question. All three of your businesses, and this is a great point, they all exist in really crowded markets. And we've got a question here. Curious how you've made your product offerings stand out. Rowan, maybe we can start with you on that one.
Yeah, the curly hair space, or hair care in general, is obviously huge. And then it gets a little smaller when you make it just curly focused. But I will say that it's larger in the States. In Canada, it's actually still quite small, which is why I felt the need to even launch this product, because I wasn't finding anything based in Canada. And if I was, the quality was like super generic, something that you could just get at Shoppers. Or the pricing was like out of this world, and you were paying like, $80 for a bottle of shampoo. And I was like, why does it cost this much to have curly hair? Like, I did not understand. So with just living the market research, to be honest, I didn't even really need to go out and do it. Like I was my own consumer, and I saw a hole in my market, which is why I definitely decided to fill it. There are definitely a lot more brands coming out now, which I honestly think is awesome, because, there's no need for, one person to there's no need for one brand. Like, there's room for all of us, and we all offer something unique. But I think just making sure that what you offer is, like I said, unique, and that it's great quality, and like you believe in your product, and eventually people will also believe in it too. Like, all the growth that Curl Shop has had has just been organic, just because people try our product and they're like, oh my God, I love this. And then they tell a friend, and then they try it, and it kind of has grown like that. So it was scary at first, but I personally found a hole in the market when I launched, and just kind of worked on filling that gap, which, helped me to where I am now.
Solving your own problem, the start of so many small businesses.
Exactly.
Yeah. Miriam, I'm really interested in your perspective on that question, because the snack food space and, grocery and in general, that's a crowded market too.
Absolutely, it is. And with food, there's no patent, there's no secret sauce. Like you could take any food product to a lab and figure out how it's made. So I think what really differentiated us, or continues to differentiate us, is that we are a manufacturer. In our space, there's a lot of co-manufacturers, and they manufacture products for most of the stuff that you see out there, So, and I really was adamant on staying a manufacturer, and I'm very thankful we got grants like the Women's Entrepreneurship Fund, OMAFRA Fund, to help us grow as a manufacturer, because our products, they're easily duplicated. And a main focus of ours is really making organic products, but also we're shifting into plant-based snacks, and we're really trying to innovate with rice milk. We have some really unique products coming out with oat milk, like chocolate peanut butter cups made with oat milk is a product that's going to launch pretty soon. So just being innovative and on top of it, and being a manufacturer, allows us to run fast and furious. Moving fast is the only way to move in the food industry, because, like I said, it's a matter of time before somebody comes out with something similar. And being competitive in other ways, I think it's important to obviously have unique products, but also being competitive with price, being competitive with packaging. Like, we had very limited marketing funds when we first started, and our packaging really stands out on shelves. Like, it grabs the eye. And I think that's what I was really honing in on as an entrepreneur, is like, how do I make my packaging really stand out, because I have limited marketing funds. And again, it's a matter of time before something similar is sitting right next to me on the shelf. So, in combination of being a manufacturer, making sure your price point is competitive, coming out with unique products, but also making sure that it really stands out through packaging, is how I think we've stayed relevant and continue to compete in a very, very, very competitive space. We're right next to, some of the biggest brands like Hershey's and Kellogg's and, and it could get quite scary, you know, but it's just, it's also telling the story too, like, which is so important. But that's also something I'm working on through social media. So that's in development, the story, but yeah.
Fantastic. Hyla, an audience question specifically for you. Social media, obviously a huge channel for a lot of small businesses to market themselves, and yours included. Is managing social media a full-time job?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, it takes a full team, I would say. Even my own social media, I feel like is a full-time job, even though I only have like 17,000 followers. I think that's a whole different story, and we can talk about, you know, being like the face of your brand and how that helps grow your company, and is a whole separate topic. But yes, 437 social media is like I kind of alluded to at the beginning. You know, we didn't have the sort of funds to kind of grow any other way other than like our own social presence. So from day one, we just had to, you know, fake it till we are it on social, and just like, you know, not think, oh, we only have 1,000 followers, let's let it reflect that we're a small brand with only 1,000 followers. We invested our time, our effort into the content, the captions, everything that we were doing. And to this day, you know, it requires definitely a full-time social media manager, but also a brand manager to overlook that, graphic designers. And then my co-founder and I are definitely super looped in on the social media, just because that's our strength in the company beyond more of like the operational and number sides. So very important. And I think we're happy that we got onto Instagram back when it was before every brand was on there and it was like the main oversaturated market. Obviously now it is a little bit, and so all of our efforts are on TikTok, and we've seen great success there, essentially climbing to, I think it's about 130,000 followers there now within a year. But even that, we're up against a lot of brands that started on TikTok only and are at like 500,000 followers, right? Without Instagram presence. So I think that always staying, you know, like people hear about TikTok, I'm like, no, it's okay, I'm just going to focus on Instagram. Those are the same people that 5 years from now are going to wish that they did start on TikTok, right? The same way that they said that about Instagram. So I think that that is one of our benefits, is that we are young, we are in the know. And my sister's 12, and she was the one who's like, you need to be on TikTok. And she was the reason we essentially blew up, because during the pandemic, I listened to her advice and I sent product out to all of the main TikTok stars. We really invested on that channel. And I'm really happy we did. So I think just remembering that social media is a free marketing tool, and it really can blow your company up. If, you know, when I see brands like Duolingo making their TikToks, I don't know if you've seen them, they are like at millions of followers on TikTok, and just so funny, so entertaining. And I look at that and I say, that's marketing. That's really great work. And I hope that we can all find sort of success through social media in whatever cool, different, unique ways that we can find success in.
Absolutely. And, you know, on that point, we've got a question from the audience for advice, looking for advice on how to get started with influencer marketing in particular. Do any of you use influencer marketing, and do you have any advice on that?
I'm definitely
just starting, so I feel like Hyla is probably the one to answer that.
Yeah, no, I don't mind speaking to it. Yeah, no, influencer marketing is great. Again, like just like social media, we are seeing some oversaturation in that space as well. I think 5 years ago, it was a really great time when we got in. Now, you know, when you're working with some specific influencers, you're seeing them working with so many different brands, like, you know, is it authentic? But sometimes you have to remember, and I talk about this in the course that we launched, How TF Do I Start? And I talk about 3 different types of influencer marketing. And, you know, like when you're gifting out, you can be looking for content, right? Like something that we can personally use for our ads, for our social media, for emails. Again, different usage rights, of course, but there's content influencer marketing, right? But there's also, I call it clout. So it could just be like, oh, you know, Jennifer Lopez in your t-shirt, or most popular influencer of Toronto, you know, that to me is clout. Like, oh, did you see 437 is on such and such, right? Those are press plays. You can use those in conferences, panels, on your website. So that's clout influencer marketing. And then there's conversion influencer marketing. And that to me is, you know, doesn't matter if their pictures are good, doesn't matter if they're a household name, but they sell a product, right? So this is the person that has a an audience. It could be 100 followers, could be 1 million followers, but people listen to whatever they post about. And I often, I tell my team this all the time. I'm like, guys, I wrote this in my course. Like, we need to apply this. We can't just be gifting, all of these people because their pictures look great, and now we're stuck with a bunch of great content, but our product is not selling. Or, we've had placements on Jennifer Lopez before, and it doesn't always convert the way you think it is. So I think that just remembering that there are different pillars and different strategies when it comes to influencer marketing, and realizing like what does your company need most, and then dialing into that more.
So interesting. And a more generalized marketing question from our audience, who they're curious just which channels have been most effective for your businesses. Maybe Rowan, I can start with you on that one. Where have you found success?
Most of the marketing success has been through like Facebook, Instagram for us. We're just starting to get onto TikTok now, but it is a full-time job within itself just to do TikTok and create that content versus like you need a whole team for everything. But yeah, Facebook ad/Instagram advertising has been super successful. And it's not just the like when you're on Instagram and it says like boost post, like actually going behind the scenes into like business admin, like that's actually where you start to see numbers. The boost post is just the one that you'll kind of see on your page, and it'll just kind of like shoot your photo out, but it doesn't actually, I find that doesn't really do anything. It's kind of just like fluff advertising. It's a way for them just to kind of make some quick money off of you. But going into the actual like business side behind the scenes, like that's where we saw most of the success. And then to be honest, we've been like really lucky that like word of mouth, a lot of the like TV placements or like ad placements that we have gotten have just been because people have believed in our product, which is awesome. So I can't really speak to how I did that other than just, I created something that was great that people wanted to use and wanted to talk about, which was awesome. So, do the same. But yeah, that's where I saw the most success.
Fantastic. Another audience question. These are all great questions, by the way. They're wondering how, if you can offer any advice on breaking into conventional brick and mortar retail spaces. Mariam, I think this is an area where you've had some experience. Can you offer any insight there?
So I think number one is making sure you have a unique product to that space. So I think you really need to understand the retailer that you're trying to get into, what they're looking for, what's currently on the shelves, what's missing. And that's really going to pique the interest of the buyer. If you have something that's super similar to something that's already there, you might not get their interest. So making sure that the product itself is unique, the packaging really stands out, the price is super competitive. And then if you have all those things, just persevere the heck out of getting in there. Sometimes it was so difficult to get a buyer's name for some retailers that were in. I would search the buyer's name on LinkedIn, or I tried to call the head office and they're like, sorry, we don't take cold calls, or we don't just give out the name. So I'd find out who the buyer's name is. I'd call and I'd be like, hi, I'm looking to speak to Sarah from whatever confectionery. And they're like, oh, she's not in. I'll be like, oh, can you give me your email? I think I wrote it wrong the last time. And just getting, creative with ways in how to get the buyer. And then once you get the buyer's information, it's really grabbing their attention with just a professional presentation. And again, how you're different, how you stand out, how you're unique to what they currently have, and just persevering through that. So
yeah. That's great. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? Okay, let's move on. I want to know a little bit, this is a question from me actually. We're in this inflationary environment right now. I think everyone across the board has seen their costs go way up. We talked a little bit about supply chains at the beginning of this conversation, but have any of you had to think about your pricing strategies and whether those need to shift? I'm curious kind of what your conversations have been like internally and how you deal as a small business with an inflationary environment like the one we're in now, which can be so challenging. I want to throw that to all three of you. Does anyone want to jump in on that?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I already mentioned that like a lot of my supply, like the pricing of like the bottles and the labels and like all that kind of stuff went up. Luckily, a lot of it has started to normalize, so I've been able to like breathe again in regards to that. But shipping is something that I can't. I just have no control over it, and that just seems to keep going up and up and up. So I've had to just kind of adjust, like it's like shipping marketing. You know how some brands will have like, you know, buy this much and get free shipping, or our shipping tier is this. So I have had to recently kind of adjust that just to make up for the fact that I couldn't absorb those costs anymore. As a small business, I mean, it's hard because you want nothing to block people from, like, you don't want anything to like cause a funnel into people checking out. So, you know, offering free shipping at a certain point is a way to like encourage new buyers to like, okay, I'll try it. Like, there's no shipping fee. But then as a small business, that shipping fee, if you have to absorb it, that's like it, you know, it just eats your profits completely. So it's a hard balance to find. And I would just say a lot of trial and error, but yeah, I'm hoping it starts to balance out again. But if it is, I mean, I find just being transparent, especially if you have a great, we call like our customer base, like our Curl Shop family, they're super understanding and they've seen us grow from like start to now. So just being transparent, we did have to do a price increase pre-pandemic for other reasons. And we just kind of like reached out to everyone and actually just said like, hey, this is why we're expanding as a company. And I was terrified that most people were going to be like, oh God, I'm not buying with this company anymore. Like their prices went up $1. But surprisingly, people were just like, no problem. Like we totally understand. We completely support you guys. Like you're a small business, do what you need to do. So you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to support a small business if you do need to kind of make up. But I just find being transparent. I would never just have a product that's $10 and then without announcing anything, it's all of a sudden 17 and just kind of like hope that no one notices. If it is going to be a big increase, I personally would just kind of address it with my customer base and my clientele, just to let them know like why we had to do that, just so they're in the loop and they don't feel like they're being like taken advantage of or something like that. But
that is a great insight. I want to throw one last question to all three of you in order, and that is, if there was something you wish you knew at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, what would it be? Hyla, I want to toss this one to you first, because I know that you run this course for other entrepreneurs. You're used to giving this kind of advice. What did you wish you knew when you got started on all this?
That the escape from a 9-to-5 just kind of gets you into a 24/7. That's maybe just how I'm feeling at the moment. But I think that it's so glamorized to be an entrepreneur and, you know, this cool new, you know, I think at least that's what I felt. And that's not why I started the company, of course. But I think that, you know, I wish that I knew that it was going to be a lot of challenges along the way and that it's not as glamorous as it looks. But of course, worth it, and I wouldn't want to do anything else. But I think just that realization check, you know, everyone says it's difficult, but you never fully understand what that's like. And I think that's exactly what we try to emulate in our course as well, is that it's not just in one area. Like everyone thinks maybe the challenge is in, you know, selling more, right? And I think that that's why we kind of segmented our course into 17 different modules, 17 different topics, because it's one day it might be manufacturing, another day it might be revenue, but then another day it could be HR, right? Hiring and interpersonal relationships. And then the next thing, it's your mental health and how that's impacted and your relationships around you, family, your partner, and how that's impacted by the business. It's all normal. It's all happens to, I'm sure, most entrepreneurs. So I think it's just remembering that you don't just get to clock out when you finish work. Yeah,
absolutely. Mariam, I want to throw that one to you too. Anything you wish you'd known?
Yeah, I wish I knew that I don't need to look for a savior. You know, I kind of feel like throughout my entrepreneurship journey, I've always looked for a savior. It's like somebody's going to come in and they're going to transform this, or this advisor is going to come in and they're going to make me a millionaire, you know, and stop seeking the external savior and look for that savior within yourself, and trust in your own abilities, and trust in, obviously you need help and you need mentorship and you need to expand and grow in many ways, but don't seek a savior, is I think the thing that I would tell myself throughout my journeys. You'll figure it out. You don't have all the answers, and nobody's going to give you all the answers. Like I even having other mentors and other businesses that we can reach out to is so important. But again, they're also not going to give you all the answers that you're seeking. So, look within yourself and trust yourself, and you'll figure it out through all the ups and downs and mistakes. You're just going to become a better version of you every year, every month, so.
Absolutely. Rowan, I want to give you the last word on that. Anything you wish you'd known?
Mine was actually similar to Hyla's. It was just, I wish I knew that it just doesn't turn off ever. Like when you start a business, you are working nonstop. Sometimes, I'll get an email at like 11, or like, especially if you're working with like overseas suppliers or all that kind of stuff, like you're just going all the time. And all the different hats you have to wear. Like a part of me knew, but I didn't know until one day it was like, the tax season is up, and I was just like sitting there and I'm like, oh wait, that's on me to like figure that out. So kind of being mentally prepared for like, it is way more than a 9 to 5. It is almost 24 hours a day that you are going, except for when you're sleeping. And even when you're sleeping, you may dream about it. So I wish I knew how much time it really did take to like start and launch a successful small business.
Well, I have absolutely loved talking to all three of you, and some of the insights you shared with us today have been so great. On behalf of the Globe and Mail, I want to thank you, Miriam, Rowan, Hyla, and Stacy earlier for joining us today. Thank you so much for your time. And I'd also love to thank everyone in the audience for attending and for all the great questions. And of course, Visa for supporting today's webcast. We'll be sharing a link to this recorded webcast in about 1 week's time, so look for that. And thank you again, everyone, and enjoy your day.
Thank you. Bye.